Hello, in this video I'll be reviewing the book The Crimson Tome, a poetry collection written by Mr. K.A. Opperman. I bought and read the Amazon Kindle version of this book, but I hope I'll also be able to buy a physical copy soon because I really enjoy this book. The book starts with a preface called Opperman's Opus, written by Dr. W. C. Farmer, and an introduction called Crimson Pages from the Future Perfect Past, written by Mr. Donald Sidney Fryer. Almost as soon as I started reading this book, I found myself excited about starting to read Mr. Opperman's poetry. These two short texts at the beginning do a very good job at getting the reader interested in what comes next. They provide a very nice description of the author and his poetry, even comparing his work to music. It's really nicely written. And the poetry collection itself is divided into 6 sections, and each of them has something unique of its own. The first section, called The Nightmare Muse, is actually a horror story told through a series of poems. The first 2 poems have a rather descriptive content, and the plot of the story actually starts in the 3rd poem, and in the 4th one I realized the poems were all interconnected into a story. And these poems contain very vivid images. Mr. Opperman has an astoundingly rich vocabulary, and he's very good at combining horror with elegance, and the poems are very atmospheric, very vivid, and these ones in the first section all together form a really nice horror story. I really liked it. And these poems in the first section are all, like I said, consecutively interconnected into a story. And the poems in the second section, called Unpleasant Dreams, they are rather individual. They describe emotions, and a wide variety of emotions, from shock and dread through love to utter sadness and grief. But all the time they maintain this usual darkly elegant atmosphere of Mr. Opperman's poetry. And in this section I'd especially like to point out one poem called The Thirst of Count Astor, which in my opinion is the saddest and the most emotional poem in this section, and I really liked it. The third section, called Nocturnal Hours Part 1, is distinct by mainly containing love-themed poems. In this section, the poet mostly elaborates the topic of doomful love and doomful desires. The emotions are described very vividly with a very refined choice of words. The atmosphere is mostly darkly romantic and really well done. In the fourth section, called Nocturnal Lovers Part 2, we also have love poems, but most of them are significantly different from the ones in the previous section. Although the poems still contain Mr. Opperman's usual darkly elegant imagery, the horror atmosphere in this section is significantly reduced. More than half of these poems have a subtitle saying "for AD," which implies they might have been inspired by and dedicated to a real person. And those poems are, in my opinion, outstandingly beautiful. While I was reading them, I could feel there was something really special about them. I really liked them. The poems of the fifth section, which is called The Palace of Fantasies, they describe a lot of different emotions like sadness or horror, thrill, many other things. What I especially liked about the poems in this section is that some of them are really unpredictable. They contain unexpected contrasts, surprising turns, some of them have shocking endings, and all these elements create quite impressive changes of atmosphere in the poems, and I was really impressed by that. And in the last section called Twilight Sorrows, we have, like the title suggests, we have mainly darkly sad poems, most of them with some to many elements of horror. In this section, I was especially impacted by some really creative comparisons and interpretations in some of these poems. They really contribute to the dark atmosphere. For example, I'd like to point out this one poem called The Angels All Are Corpses in the Sky, which, in my opinion, is creatively dark interpretation of angels, which are, as we know, usually considered something beautiful. So, like I said, this was really dark but very creative and very well written. I really liked it. And by the end of this book, after the sixth section of poems, we have four tribute poems written by Ashley Dioses and D.L. Wires. And these poems are very nice in my opinion. The style and vocabulary make a good match to Mr. Opperman's poetry. They are a nice addition to this book. And another thing I liked in this book, which I haven't mentioned yet, are some pictures accompanying some particular poems, which are also a nice addition to this book. They are like illustrations of the particular poems they accompany, and they give an extra touch of vividness to those poems, and it's really nice. And finally, I'd like to say once again, I really enjoyed this book. It's one of those books where reality is even better than expectations. I actually discovered Mr. Opperman's poetry in the zine called The Audient Void, which I reviewed in my previous video. So I was impressed by Mr. Opperman's poems, which I read there, so I got interested in reading more of his work. So I bought this book, and I really wasn't disappointed. So if you like dark poetry in general, I can strongly recommend this book, The Crimson Tome by Mr. K.A. Opperman. Like I said, it's really good, it's amazing. I had my own attempts of writing dark poetry, but There was only so much of tolerably good work I could do there, and Mr. Opperman's poetry is everything I never managed to create in my own work. It's really great. I really enjoyed it. So, like I said, if you like dark poetry, I can strongly recommend this book. And thank you so much for watching this video, and see you next time. Bye!